Hi there, this is Andy here, co-founder of Yoga Veda Institute and director of the Sacred Breath Self-Healing Retreat, as well as an instructor of pranayama meditation and yoga philosophy inside our Ayurveda Yoga Therapy Foundation teacher training. Today, we are going to introduce the practice of pranayama and how it applies in Ayurveda. But first, let's begin by making a quick review of what is pranayama in the first place. Pranayama, as most of you probably already know, is the control or mastering of life force energy, or prana. Swami Shivananda says it best in his publications on the science of pranayama when he says, the prana might be defined as the finest vital force in everything which becomes visible on the physical plane as motion and action, and on the mental plane as thought. The word pranayama, therefore, means the restraint of vital energies. The control of this force is what is aimed at by the yogins by means of pranayama. He who conquers this is not only the conqueror of his own existence on the physical and mental plane, but the conqueror of the whole world. For the prana is the very essence of cosmic life. All physical forces, all mental forces come under the category prana. It is force on every plane of being, from the highest to the lowest. The yogi who becomes an expert in the knowledge of this secret will have no fear from any power, because he has mastery over all the manifestations of power in the universe. Now let's take a look at how pranayama can be useful from an Ayurvedic perspective. To begin with, the act of conscious breathing has a direct effect on the mind and body. Therefore, conscious breathing has a direct effect on the elemental composition and on the doshas of each one of us as well. So pranayama can be used to modify the current state of the doshas. Because of this, it is important to understand the natural qualities of each form of breath, and even more important, to have the right intention while practicing each technique. This is due to the natural fact that intention can change the effect of a specific pranayama regardless of its natural qualities. So, why is it important to understand your doshic imbalance in relating to pranayama practice? Well, generally speaking, pranayama can purify the nadis, or energy channels, as well as having a calming effect on the mind, which with time will eventually take you to a meditative state. But when a person is in a certain state or their doshas are out of balance, the practice of certain pranayams can either bring balance to the system or take it even more out of balance. So it's important to first know and understand our dosha, and even more important, to begin to understand our current state of imbalances and what practices are either bringing balance or a state of imbalance. It is important to remember and understand that at first we want to keep it as simple as possible. Some of the most powerful pranayams are the most simple and basic ones. Now we're going to talk about the effect of certain pranayams and how they interact with the doshas. But always remember that all pranayam can be affected by the intention of the practitioner, the mindset of the practitioner, and the result and effect can also be affected by the rhythm and amount of repetitions we do. There is not a rule that says that certain body types should practice or not any pranayama. This applies more to current conditions, like heart conditions or any other strong imbalances. In theory and practice, a balanced dosha or a balanced system should be able to practice any form of pranayama, keeping it, of course, accordingly to the particular dosha. Now let's take a look at some of the basic pranayams in details and how they affect the systems, Ayurvedically speaking. Let's talk about Uyahi. As you might already know, the many benefits of Uyahi are that it reduces mucus in the throat, builds the digestive fire, and purifies the nadis. It also aerates the lungs, decreases phlegm, and tones the nervous system. Because Uyahi has a strong affinity to raise the element of air and space, it is a wonderful breath to be practiced by those who are mostly earth and water elements or kapha doshas. Now, because Ujjayi breath raises the elements of air and space, does this mean that those with Vata predominant constitution should not practice Ujjayi? No, but it does mean that it should be practiced with awareness, in moderation, and with the intention of grounding, steadying, and stabilizing the system. Now let's take a look at another well-known pranayama, Anulom Vilom, or alternate nostril breathing. This is probably one of the best pranayams to be practiced for individuals with Vata constitution, as it is gentle and creates calm state of mind. It is a grounding breath, and in healthy individuals it pacifies Vata and is neutral to Pitta and Kapha. For Vata imbalances, because Vata is predominantly air and space, we want to ground, calm, and focus the mind. So the best recommendation is to practice alternate nostril breathing in its most basic way, with a grounded focus or intention while breathing in through the left nostril, retaining a bit, and breathing out through the right nostril, and alternating sides with equal breaths. This has a calming effect on the mind and is especially great for those who have an overactive Vata mind. For pitta imbalances, you can use the same breath, but this time breathing in through the left nostril and out through the right. This will produce a cooling effect on the body and the mind. For those with too much fire element, practicing left nostril breathing will have a calming and cooling effect both in the body and in the mind as well. For kapha imbalances, you can also use the same breath. However, this time breathing in through the right nostril and out through the left, which will produce a warming and energizing effect in the body. So you see, the same breath, when practiced slightly different, with slightly different focus or intention, has a highly and widely different effect on the body and the mind. It is important to remember that even though Anulam Bilam can be practiced in many different ways, in its basic form is a tridoshic breath, meaning that it is great for all doshas or constitutions. Ultimately, if you don't know exactly how to apply it, just apply the basic form, breathing in and out through both, alternating as you already know. Without retention, without counting, simply following the path and the natural extension and expansion and contraction and retraction of the lungs. That will be enough. Just remember, increase the time progressively and patiently. Now let's look at another breath, Brahmari. Brahmari lists many physical benefits. For one, it is beneficial in the treatment of insomnia, and it's a cooling breath. Because Brahmari is a cooling breath, it can aggravate Vata and Kapha doshas when it is practiced in excess. Of course, because of its natural cooling effects, it is most beneficial for those of Pitta dosha. Now, does this mean that persons of Vata or Kapha constitution should not practice Brahmari? No. What does it mean is that we need to design our practice with awareness to the effect that each practice is having in our physical bodies, or Ayurvedic constitutions, and our minds. When we know that we are always cold, we have cold hands, cold feet, and coolness in the joints, when the digestive system is cold, and we have too much air and space element in our body, we would want to practice those pranayams that are going to benefit us most, meaning those warming and calming pranayams. When we are unaware of the Ayurvedic effects of pranayam on our practice and on our state of mind, we can further aggravate our imbalances. When pitta is out of balance, we want to avoid heating breaths such as Kapalbhati, Ujjayi Bhastrika, or any other heating active breath. However, same heating pranayam Kapalbhati, Ujjayi Bhastrika, or any other warming breath will be wonderful for those cold Kapha or Vata individuals. Any pranayam that is adding too much air or space elements, creating a sense of dizziness or lightheaded, will really aggravate Vata dosha. But those same qualities will be very beneficial to Kapha, who will do really well with those energizing breaths. So to recap, let's take a look at which pranayams are more beneficial for each doshas. To balance Vata, or those qualities of cold, light, air, and space, practicing warming, grounding, balancing, stabilizing breath, such as Brahmari or Anulam Bilam, and any other calming and heating breath is what's recommended. To balance the light, dry, and hot qualities of fire in Pitta, practice cooling, calming breath, such as Sitali, left nostril breath, or any cooling breath with a calm and focused intention. To balance the cool and heavy qualities of Kapha dosha, practice warming, energizing breath such as Uyahi, Bhastrika, Kapalbhati, or any heating and active form of breathing. Notice that some energizing pranayams like Bhastrika have a calming effect in the mind, so they can be good for active Vata mind when practiced with the correct intention. The important thing is to remember that it is not always the pranayama itself that is beneficial or not to a specific dosha. It's the intention, intensity, and quantity of the practice. For example, a pitta practice in 5 rounds of 60 repetitions of Kapalbhati with no breaks in between and with the intention in mind to generate Agni or fire will end up in a very different result than a Kapha doing the same practice. But the same pitta could practice 3 rounds of 30 repetitions, taking breaks in between, and with a mindset of moving the prana or the vajus in very specific ways and get a completely different effect of the same pranayama. Don't mistake this statement. All pranayams have a very specific result, but that result can be decreased or increased by the practitioner. Their intention and their method of practicing will have a great influence in the end result. More than memorizing the indications of each pranayams, I recommend that you begin to recognize the Ayurveda and dosha qualities in them. In most of cases, by doing that, you will eventually figure out what their specific action is, and therefore how do they affect the doshas. Begin to think of each pranayam as heating or cooling, calming or energizing. Then you will begin to see the dosha's affinity for each breath. So, to summarize, all pranayams are done to increase prana in the system. All pranayams are beneficial for all doshas, but they all need to be practiced accordingly to the personal constitution and to the current imbalances. There is not a general prescription, as is with everything in Ayurveda. Each has to be made for the individual and for the moment and time of life. And finally, remember, the best way to learn is to practice the pranayam and to observe their effects. That is the best way to understand each of them. Remember that yoga is a practical science. So reading about this will not help you to understand how pranayams affect your unique body and mind type. Practice will. So go and practice with awareness. Now it's time for you to go and discover what pranayama practice will be most beneficial for you. So go ahead and take a look inside your lesson model for today's workbook and discover your perfect for you pranayama practice. When you're done, go ahead and share your findings inside the Facebook group, where I will be to answer any question you have. Thanks for listening, and I will see you when we talk about Ayurveda and your meditation practice.